So does anyone know what the China shock is originally? If not, just Google it and then read me the AI summary right now. Yeah, wow, perfect answer. How did you guys know that? Perfect answer. That's incredible. So this is MIT economist David Autor. David Autor is the one that created the concept of the China shock. And he was talking about how in the year 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization and basically became equivalent to most favored nation status with all these other countries around the world. And the second they did that, a lot of manufacturing jobs started flowing to China. Not just from America, but heavily from America. You can sort of see this here. Millions of jobs disappeared in manufacturing as they flowed from America to China. This is called the China shock. Okay, that was the idea, is that the addition of this massive new labor market caused large changes in trade. And David Autor, this guy right here, co-authored this paper, and it was a big deal. Anyway, he recently did a follow-up interview where he talked about China Shock 2.0. He basically said this. I'm gonna try and make it quite simple. He said, in China Shock 1.0, America lost a lot of low-skilled manufacturing jobs. You know, a lot of things became made in China and they got shipped over on big containerized tankers to America. What we got in exchange was cheap goods, but we lost manufacturing capability. What we gained instead, though, was a thriving information technology and service sector. So while it was deeply damaging to parts of America, like you might say the Rust Belt, people in Appalachia, you know, middle America, all of these like blue collar manufacturing, pretty well paying jobs that like could support a town disappeared quickly over the period of like 10, 15 years. They just vanished. And so it caused deep damage, but only in certain areas and only for certain people, primarily like, honestly, like middle-aged white men in small towns. That is what the China shock hit most, because people without education, like if you were a non-college educated white guy in a small town in the Midwest, you could get a manufacturing job that was pretty well off. And instead, that job got taken over to China. And this caused deep scarring, deep political scarring in these areas that honestly later on created the rise of things like Donald Trump. Like this is what happened. Like this is the China shock. However, it's worth noting that in this time period, even though America lost a lot of manufacturing jobs, it gained other types of jobs. So on the whole, even though we had real problems, the economy did grow. Like America adapted and still had like high-end technology, financial services, tech, airplane manufacturing, like that, okay? They had these things. What David Autor is warning about in his recent interview that I just read is he said the China Shock 2.0 is coming, where it's quite possible that China might come for industries like semiconductors, like airplane manufacturing, like electric vehicles, like AI, like robotics. And he's like, if these things go away, then America is truly in a significantly worse spot, because those things, these high-end, top-tier manufacturing, top of the value chain, is where the real money is. And he's complaining in the interview. He's like, I think that Donald Trump is fighting the wrong war. He is fighting a lost war from 20 years ago that's going to lose us the much more important war right now. And I think that that's a pretty wise assessment. I think there's no real world where we get like toaster manufacturing jobs back to the United States. Even China can't keep them. Just to be clear, China right now is going through its own China shock 20 years later. As China gets richer, they are losing the toaster manufacturing jobs to countries like Vietnam, but they're moving up the value chain on EVs. So the idea that America is going to piss away its advantage in things like EVs or Boeing manufacturing or semiconductors to try and get an advantage in low-cost manufacturing or making t-shirts, toasters is pretty foolish. And so I wanted to just bring up what I thought was an interesting concept of the China Shock 2.0 from this guy. I think he summarized it quite well. Again, worth saying, you might expect that the drop in trade from the United States from the tariffs is going to destroy China's exports. But in fact, China's exports are up 5%, despite US trade being down 35%. And they've made up for it by exporting more to Latin America, more to Japan, more to EU, more to India, more to Australia, more to the UK, more to Canada, more to Africa. Now, some of these are still going to the US. It's transshipping. They might export to other parts of Asia, and then these things go to America roundabout. But either way, they're still getting their bag on exports. They're still finding someone to buy it. So again, I'm just super questionable, this whole tariff strategy. And it's comforting to me in a way to see someone with a MIT economics background giving a similar question. Just being like, I don't think the way you're fighting this battle makes a lot of sense for what the new struggle is. Yeah, he just said it's really important to strategically support advanced manufacturing industries rather than attempt to revive labor-intensive, low-skilled assembly work. He criticizes recent US policy responses as misguided and inadequate, fearing a repeat of past mistakes. And then he says this, all right? If we fail to respond effectively now, we will have devastating long-term economic and geopolitical consequences for America. It would be long-term poorer and geopolitically weaker if we cannot maintain our leadership in high-end industrial manufacturing. I think he also says one more thing. He says at the end, he said, the trick to solving this problem is to elect somebody older so they're more wise. He said, Trump's good, but we can find somebody even older. Biden was great, but even older than that would be perfect. He said, if you can go like 90, 95, 96 years old minimum, then they would have truly the knowledge needed to adapt to this changing climate. Biden again, I think. Is this you saying you'd run? Okay, guys, I'm not that old. All right, I'm actually very spry. What do you want the US to do? Stop China from investing to helping higher up in the value chain? It's not stopping them. When you have as big of an advantage as the US had, all you'd have to do is snowball it. All you'd have to do is like support the high-end industries, maybe subsidize investments, protection. You could do anything, but you have to just make sure it's prioritized. One way to make it less competitive is to, for example, tariff their imports. Let's say you're an airplane manufacturer and you have to import steel or whatever. If you throw up a tariff on that steel, now US airplane manufacturing is not competitive. You just have to not shoot yourself in the foot, basically. Another thing that is a smart idea to do, let's say you want to remain the world leader in chips. You might think, well, if we ban our chips from being sold in China, that'll keep us ahead. But in fact, it's the opposite. So many companies in China were not buying Chinese alternatives because they were just buying the reliable American ones they already trusted. Do you know what I'm saying? But now that they can't get their hands on enough of them because they're blocked, they just buy the Chinese alternative, which allows them to build up. They get actual experience with customers and money. I just think there's a lot of like short-sighted policies that don't understand how you keep a lead. It's going to be impossible, I'm sorry, what? To move as fast as China's command economy to fight in the same industry? I think that is a really silly take on it. There's two things wrong with that. One, when in the past, let's say the Cold War, when, let's say the American system and the command economy system went into the same industry, the American system worked better. You were able to produce more at more innovative rates, better value. Computers were the great example of the time. But China's system right now is not really command economy. Like China and electric vehicles is about as capitalistic as it gets. It's as competitive and bloodthirsty as an industry can get. China's EV industry has like so many competitors brutally fighting on price and innovation constantly. All they've done is set up like incentives. So it's like, it's hard to get a license plate for a gas powered vehicle. It's much easier. You can get one for free if it's for EV. They have subsidies, right? They have things like that, but it's like overall, it's just this brutally competitive industry. Anyway, that creates this brutal fight from all these companies to make the best cost, best product feature EV. And there's so much competition. It's an insane price war, driving down the prices and driving up the features. Is it kind of inefficient to drive the cars through the ocean all the way to America? You'd think that. A lot of people have told me that. They're like, how can it be more efficient to make something on the other half of the world and ship it across the ocean rather than just make it here? And the truth is, it is. I don't know. Global shipping is just not that expensive. The ships are so big, they can carry so much, you make so many. The cost of it is not that much. So it just gets made where they have the best manufacturing for it. The best example is the fruit cups made in Argentina, packed in Thailand and sold to the USA. Yeah, think about that. Think how cheap a fruit cup is. It's made in 2 different countries across the globe and then shipped to America rather than make it somewhere. It's just when you're shipping that many, you know what I'm saying? The shipping cost is negligible. It's just about where it can be made and packed the cheapest. Is US tariffs used to turn the poor countries away from China? They're being hit really hard. I wonder if it's strategy by America. I don't understand. How would that work? Maybe I can get. So the tariff could be used as a threat, right? It could be like, hey, if you don't stop buying from China, then we're going to tariff you. If you don't stop buying from China, we'll tariff you. It could be like a threat, if that's what you're saying. And that did sort of happen today, where Trump said if anybody is aligned with BRICS' anti-America strategy, they're going to get an even bigger tariff. Didn't Trump think Spain was in BRICS? Yeah, he did. Are there any policies and systems in China like to see the USA adopt? The main thing that I think China has done that America could really learn from is investment in infrastructure. Although they did it to an extreme, to an extreme that probably bite them. Number one is they are more quickly able to build things. Like China can build a bridge or a train or whatever much quicker. There's less red tape that slows it down. They can just build it. And there's a big advantage to that because people see their living area become better. But yeah, I mean, the main thing they did was they built a huge high-speed rail network in 10 years. And California can't build a small high-speed rail network in 20 years. How does doing that will make our billionaires richer? Do you think that China doesn't have billionaires? It's an annoying discussion to have, I'll be honest with you. I feel like every time I talk about China, I hate both camps of people that talk in my chat. I find them both to be so stupid. I find them both to be like really dumb. It's either like people that are like, yeah, China's never, every airport they build is all fucking fake concrete. Their cars all explode. They're not real. And then other people are like, oh, my glorious leader Xi Jinping. There's been no problems with taking 300% debt to GDP on local government debt to constantly build infrastructure that isn't even being used as a way to artificially inflate the GDP numbers for the target date set by Xi. Like there's massive problems on both sides. Like it has not paid off for many of the local governments who are now deeply in debt on infrastructure projects that don't go anywhere. But some of them have paid off. Like there's some incredible high-speed rail that is being used. How is that Xi's fault? Listen, here's how it works, right? I'm just gonna explain it to you so you can understand. All right, so Xi Jinping, our glorious leader, he says to every local region, think of it like a state. Think of it like telling Florida, okay? You have to grow at 5% this year. You have to. That's the target. It's not enforced, but it's enforced. Wink, wink. Like you have to grow at 5%. All right, what's the best way to grow 5%? To build. You can grow your GDP really easily if you build a bunch of bridges and roads and buildings. So if you have to hit this target and you know the best way to do it is to build, then you start taking on debt. So you start borrowing money to build airports and bridges and trains. And you try at first to build the ones you need. And the first wave you build are incredible. They grow GDP. They're very useful. Everyone loves them. These trains are awesome. These bridges are awesome. These airports are awesome. But then every year you gotta grow 5%. So you keep borrowing money and you keep building less and less useful new rail lines or new bridges or new airports. And then all of a sudden, you know, it's years later and your debt is now ballooned to 300%, something absurd, and you're still in this infrastructure loop and it's less and less useful, less and impactful. Each new rail line is not adding to GDP as much as it was. It's actually not doing much at all. That is a bad feedback loop. We have our own bad feedback loops here. I'm just saying that's a bad feedback loop they have there. But in the end, that is a problem for the state. But you as a citizen at least get fucking crazy good trains. Whereas here, we also have a debt problem and you're not even really seeing that. You're not seeing the results. Who's your favorite Chinese leader and why is it Mao? Mao is probably my least favorite Chinese leader. My favorite Chinese leader would be Deng Xiaoping, who pulled more people out of poverty than any human in history. He couldn't have done that without Mao. Mao defenders are cringe, bro. Here's the thing. There's a great quote about Mao from a Chinese scholar. He said, if Mao had died in 1956, he would have been immortalized, a true legend, a god of China. Because that's when he united all of China and helped it at least become a single unified nation without being influenced by outsiders. True, correct. He ended the civil war in China. Fine, win. If he died in 1966, he would have been a great man, but flawed. But he died in 1976, so what can you say? It's such a fire quote because as Mao went on, his horrendous economic policies caused so much starvation and death that he can't be remembered favorably. He was good in wartime. If you care about uniting China, then yes, he did a good job for that. But as he ruled, the longer he ruled, it was terrible. So I think it's a fire quote. That's what I think about Mao. I think had he died in 1956, there's not much you could say about him because he really did at least start China on a path towards becoming an economic giant. Better than Cambodia with Pol Pot? That's your bar for leadership? One of the most brutal and repressive dictators of all time. That's the bar you have to clear to be a good leader is Pol Pot. It's more deaths, by the way. I stay pulling my pot for real. Thank you for that.